wait for a little bit. And all right, everybody, it is Education by Ed today. He's a little bit late, but that's going to be all right because we're going to be uh, listening to an exhibit 05051, basically an IRS issue thing that's happening, and where they actually admit, if you listen closely, that it is a voluntary organization, a voluntary service. You are not lawfully required to pay. Listen.
When the liberal group got a exempt status, and 3 that I just mentioned didn't for over 2 years. Mr. Nunes mentioned Ms. Lerner. Who was her boss in 2011 and 2012? Who did she report to?
I believe it would have been
Sarah Ingram, maybe?
part of that time, and part of that time another gentleman.
Okay, and that other gentleman has since submitted his resignation?
I believe so.
And what is Ms. Ingram doing today? What's her job title?
She works on on implementing the Affordable Care Act.
Okay, who promoted her to that position?
I would have moved her into that position.
Why would you promote somebody to that position who was in charge of the exempt organization division, which certainly has had some controversy over the last couple years, under an investigation?
Because she is a superb civil servant, sir.
So she had nothing to do with this?
I wouldn't imagine so.
Even
By the
though
way, I can't speak to individual cases. I can say generally, we provided horrible customer service here. I will admit that. We did. Horrible customer service.
You
Whether it was
targeted
politically
an individual.
motivated or not is a very different question.
You targeted an individual, an American who still doesn't know to this day why he was question number 26.
All right, time has expired. Mr. Becerra is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your testimony. And let me key off of something, Mr. Miller, you said. You said foolish mistakes were made. I think the President actually said it better. He said that the handling of those tax-exempt applications in that process at the IRS was outrageous and intolerable. No excuse. And as much as we know that the folks at IRS have a thankless job because they have to go and tell their fellow Americans that they may be audited or they have to do this work understaffed, we have to maintain the confidence in the system because it's a voluntary system of payment of our taxes.
Agreed.
And so you are right, it was a foolish mistake, but the President's even more correct that it was outrageous and intolerable. Now, let me also focus on something, Mr. George, you said. When you were asked, was there any finding?
All right, well, Ed's finally shown up, so as you just heard, it is a voluntary. That guy, that's what he said. Just rewind the audio once it's the very beginning of the show. Listen to it. They are admitting that it is a voluntary taxes. Mm-hmm. So, Ed, nice to see you show up. I had another like 5 minutes to go on it, but I thought let you get it going and actually get some good education going. So, take it away.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And that's the one thing we're going to be proceeding here in a minute on it, to bring up a lot of stuff here on the circumstances of taxes. When you pay taxes, you're paying the British government, the Roman Catholic Vatican Christian churches. People say, what does that have to do with the price of tea in China? But when you pay the churches, remember, when you go in and you make a donation to a church, you're paying them to rape, rob, and pillage your children. People say, oh, no, that can't be. You have to realize and wake up to the reality of the truth in the world here. You cannot live in fiction. The churches are that bad. This is not a joke. The churches will turn on you in a heartbeat. That's their job. Their job is not to protect you or your children. Their job is to create income. And taxes, when you pay your income tax, state and federal, that goes to the British government and the Vatican. It does not go to your schools, to anything in your community. It does not go there. They can lie to you all they want, but I have gone after the funding mechanisms on that. I've asked them to prove it to me, and nobody's been able to prove it to me. The system hasn't been able to prove anything to me. And trust me, I go after these men and women. I've even recalled an entire school board government body proving this. Proved they embezzled $30 million without a shadow of a doubt. And so it is. So the thing is that knowing what the law is compared to what fantasy people want to live or even tell their children. You know, that is the one thing that people have to realize. Your system is a voluntary system. And that is the whole point. You have to start understanding how these things work. You know, and that's the one thing is once you start understanding that these things work in such a fashion that you realize that the government doesn't work for you, your police departments and your sheriff's department or IRS agents collecting, that's all they do, is they're tax collectors. And they don't care about you. How many people you know have been kidnapped and held for ransom in what they call their jails? Identity theft and and then it really is kidnapped and held for ransom. So when you get into taxes, I'm going to read some tax quotes up here in a minute. I haven't pulled it up because I was running a little slow today because I'm like some people that I knew about the jump an hour ahead, but when I went for a walk, I didn't pay attention to the time when I got back from compared to one clock to another, and we all have done that. So that's not, it's just life. It's just one of those things of life. But I'm going to read this to you so you comprehend what goes on with the court system. We will put up there too, and we have it on the website to the best of my knowledge. And I guess we'll get that eventually put on the front page too at one of our major deals. But taxes are voluntary, and there's a YouTube channel called Theft by Deception. And it walks you through the tax code. Okay, and that's the one thing, and we have the laws that prove the only ones who are obligated to pay taxes are elected and public servants, registered church members, registered voters, and all immigrants. That's by law, because immigrants don't have rights. Public servants, when they did the de facto dollar on March 9, 1933, the Bankruptcy Act of the British government, called the United States government, filed in 1925 in Florida, which we do have the evidence that proves that. But here's a wonderful statement. This is a bold lie. The 16th Amendment was never ratified by Article 5 of the United States Constitution. Congressional Record, House, June 13, 1967, page 15641. As well as page 15646. And the court case that made the congressional record had to review this was Dyett, D-Y-E-T-T, versus Turner, T-U-R-N-E-R, of 1968. And it makes it very clear that taxes were never ratified. And then we'll have a guest on tonight. He'll get into Long v. Another case, and he's got some other information we're going to plug his mind on. But this is the one thing that we want to get into this stuff so you comprehend this, because it's your responsibility to protect your bloodline. It is your responsibility. No one else, not somebody else, not some other agency. And remember, agencies are corporations. They don't have authority. They don't have rights over you. You have the rights over yourself. If you are a lawful American, if you are immigrant, then that way immigrants have privileges. So let's make that very clear about the structure of lawful versus legal. Lawful goes by the Constitution and the Immigration Act of 1774. That's where it goes by. There's nothing else that goes on with the structure. And once people comprehend that fact of how things work compared to the alleged beliefs that they get convinced today, most people want to sit there and they tell people, it's like, how many times did you tell your child growing up, oh, you need to pay taxes, oh, you need a driver's license, oh, you need a hunting and fishing license, oh, you need a marriage license to have sex. Basically what that all is about. That is the one thing that people don't comprehend. How all these licenses. You have a business license. I can say, when I had several businesses, I didn't have a business license. I made sure that I tried to stay out of the system as best I could. I didn't want to be part of the British government or their religion, because the Constitution separates me from religious beliefs. And that's the point that people don't get when it comes to religion. Religion is a voluntary structure, not a mandatory structure. We get taught and convinced of religion just like we do paying taxes. So when you comprehend the difference of taxes, you comprehend the difference of the structure of what's lawful and legal. Life becomes so much easier than what people give it credit to be. And once people start giving life real credit and realize how easy life really is compared to what we're led to believe and indoctrinize in the circumstances of these things. It's like the one thing is getting into court cases. I do recommend that people use court cases to defend themselves. All right? Or not to defend themselves particularly, but use their administrative rules and their regulations and their laws back to them. So you want to use their ammunition. They put it, they wrote it, we quote it. So they wrote this stuff out. So when they wrote this stuff out to do this to we the people, that gives us a new perspective of how to go around things, as some might say. So the point is comprehending the structure of what is lawful and legal. Lawful is Constitution. Legal is Article 1 court system of the Tribunal Vatican Christian court system. Because if you do your research, you'll find out the Christians run the court because your pastors and ministers of your communities always tell the courts or the cop what's going on about you. And I just discovered some interesting news that I thought was wonderful that I got sent to me. That's an old court case, not that far back. And I have to go along with it to believe it to a degree because it was actually written in a newspaper back east. But these are the ammunitions that I'm putting together. I got to call the court system because I want to actually get a copy of the real court system so we can put it up. But the Superior Court rules that sheriffs do not have arrest authority. Sheriffs don't have authority at all because they were appointed after the Civil War, technically, and so they're a corporation. That's what this court case says. That the newspaper wrote on it, and I was shocked. The paper that this came from is, let me get it, the Coastal Point, and it's by Maria Counts, who wrote this. She's the staff reporter, and she's the one who wrote it for this newspaper. So, and the one thing is that when people talk, including myself, we're going to start quoting our sources, because we need to know where the sources are, because we are not going to be doing hearsay stuff like the court does. Because we want to quote our sources so that way you and I and everybody gets to know where we're talking about, how we are doing these things, what we're handling for ourselves, and how we're progressing. And I hate using that word because progressing is nothing more than damaging land and property. When it comes down to it, you can develop, but there's knowing the difference of development compared to the corporation structure that we live today. And now we're forced into by a lot of things under the 14th Amendment because, see, people don't realize how the 14th Amendment works with the capital C and the lower C. So once you know how this system puts together with the Article 1, the Article 3 courts, you start putting this stuff together and you start going, holy moly, how does all this stuff, it starts working so easy, but how did we get all twisted around? How did we not see this fact? So these are things that we don't see in front of our faces half the time, and that's where we end up losing a lot of our structure. We end up losing our family rights. We end up losing our blood rights. And see, that's the horrifying thing right there, is losing one's blood right. Because once you lose somebody, once you start losing your blood right, your lawful bloodline structure, what else is there? What is your future? That is the one thing that people got to realize. And your future is your children and grandchildren. Because if they don't exist, you don't exist. That is the one thing that you've got to realize, that these things, if you don't exist, they don't exist. So it's putting things together so that way we comprehend the circumstances. And so, and it's really putting these things together so we comprehend it. And I want to get into a couple of things that we have on our, oh God, I don't know what the hell I downloaded today, but hang on a second. Let me get to my site here. Hey, I want to get into the taxes. It says we do have a structure on taxes on our site. We do get into the structure of the 30 major cases on tax fraud. And we do have a letter on my site that I picked up from a living being. And it goes, this is a district letter that was done April 4th, 1985. On March 5th, 1985, a charge of tax evasion was filed in U.S. court against an Indianapolis, Indiana, by the U.S. District Attorney, or U.S. Attorney, and that was, the Beecraft, Loyal Beecraft case. And we're going to have a gentleman that was part of that that's going to get into that. So when the Beecraft case did this, they proved the 16th Amendment was never ratified, and that's where I ended up picking this note up. And this was done from the Commissioner of the Internal Revenue Service to all of the agencies of the IRS throughout the 48 states. But we have a gentleman that he was involved. He knows more about it personally. So we're going to let him speak here in a few minutes. We're going to give the floor to him and let him go on it. But this is the point of comprehending how your public employees work. If we have elected and public servants, your court clerk are supposed to be filing your records. That's all their job is. They're not supposed to sit out there and go after your financial gain. When they use your Social Security number or your identity, that's identity theft. When a sheriff or the local courts file a claim on you, even a property tax issue, or the other point, because I'm working on property tax issue, got another one that I'm letters. Once I get all my letters finished up and sent out, we'll get those posted. But when you get a traffic violation, infraction, or whatever you want to call it this week, when you do that, that's identity theft. They're stealing your identity for personal financial gain. That violates the Securities and Exchange Commission's law. But see, they don't want people to know how these things affect by law. I'm not talking statute codes and administrative rules. I'm talking law, lawful. Big difference. Some people say, well, that's the law. Well, when people say that, always ask them to define what the law is. Because when people say something's the law, it's like, well, is that a statute code or administrative rules? Well, if it's statute code and administrative rules, that's not law, because that doesn't apply to me, because I'm not 14th Amendment slave. I have filed my instruments to get out of that system publicly in the papers and make public notices. I did it on the city council. I did it on the county commissioners. I've even filed it in the Oregon State House and Senate. Not one of them disagreed with anything I said. And I've even got a couple of videos that they agreed what I said and said, well, thank you for your time, Mr. Johnston. Of course, I like to stay away from the Mr. Johnston point because I am not part of their structure. I don't want to be part of their structure. And see, that's the one thing that people have to realize. When you put yourself into these points of view, you are making yourself a liability to yourself. When they ask you to sign these instruments for paperwork, that's where people don't get it. When they ask you to sign these paperwork, you know, you don't want to do that. I mean, I had that where they went after me, telling me that the judge, and I got this on YouTube video, judge says, well, you didn't sign the paperwork, I want you to sign it. Well, in tax cases, that's what they do to you, too, is that they say, well, you didn't sign the paperwork that we wanted you to file. Well, the one thing is look, we got a lot of videos that we're putting up on the site here in time that we're going to put a whole bunch of court cases up. And you can watch these court cases where people win the court cases. You know, that's the whole point. And that is the most of the point that you've got to realize that when it comes to your taxes, your elected and public employees, taxes are voluntary, including property taxes. State and federal income tax is voluntary. And that is the one point that people have got to start comprehending to stand up for their rights, not privileges. Because if you're a 14th Amendment lower C citizen, you have privileges. If you're the upper C, the Constitution citizen, a bloodline, you have rights. And see, the other point is that I'm going to bring up this point that I don't know if we have up there on the site yet, but I don't think so. But I have a deal that from a judge that wrote how the court system is a fraud. And as soon as it comes up here, because my computer is running like a turtle, I want to bring that into you. Now, we do have on our website, it's called Federal Court Case Shows Evidence U.S. Legal System is a Fraud. And you go to new.Oregon Trackers, you click on that, it's on the front page of the new dot. And it has the 30 federal court cases that won each and every time. So it's like when these people call you up or they send you a letter, you send them a letter that you're not going to contract you. Now, I want you guys to realize that Mary Jo White, she is the former U.S. Attorney for New York State. Not only that, this woman is not only that, the former chair of the Securities and Exchange Commission. And you can type that in on the internet if you're not on our site or if you don't have it. But the thing is you can type in, and she's the former head of the Securities and Exchange Commission, and she admitted the court system is a fraud for the last 81 years. Of course, this article was written 3 years ago. And when she came out with it, it really throwing people for a loop because she realized the tax system is a fraud. The court system runs by administrative legalese and tribunals. And that's the one thing that you got to realize, that if you end up in a court, you want to demand a trial by jury. I think I did that right. You don't want to sit there and have a judge decide your case, because the judge sits there and decides the case for the personal financial gain of himself, the state attorney general. And very few times does they let one of those court cases slide through. Once in a while they do. That way it proves that they're not totally corrupt. That's how they get away with this stuff. Trying to prove they're not totally correct. And people think, well, they're doing a wonderful job, but no, they're not. And like I said, Theft by Deception is a wonderful video to watch. It is an hour and a half long, but it does walk you through the tax procedures. Because the Congress, and we're going to have a gentleman bring that up here shortly, that there is no, Congress admitted that they cannot divide income tax. The only thing that people are liable if you have interest and dividends. But that's under the 14th Amendment, lower C. Constitution, you are totally exonerated from taxes, especially Native Americans. Native Americans, we have a treaty and a contract with the government. Remember, the government is the British Vatican government. It is not the government of we the people. So once you comprehend the separation of the system that these men and women have provided for us, called the British Auxiliary Registered to the King and Queen of England, and that's what these people did. They came from England. They started bringing their foreign religions into our country, teaching us foreign religions, and then teaching us how to be their slave. And so most of us became a slave over the last several generations. And remember, taxes and all this stuff, especially property tax, were not a deal on the West Coast until recent years. But they got through that because you have men and women that come after you with sidearms on them, or actually by their terminology, weapons and guns. Because sidearms are arms by the Constitution, not by a foreign corporation word. And that is the one thing, is knowing how to speak your words, your English, your language. Comprehending the structure, dealing with the actual wording of what is presented, and even a dictionary. Remember, the dictionary is rewritten all the time, and is always brought up dealing with different things. And people don't even know half the time what the Constitution really means because they don't read it. So here's somebody speak the Constitution, or what they think is the terminology of the Constitution. But most people don't know the Constitution because most people don't take the time to read the Constitution. And that is the one thing that people don't realize, the word assume, what assume really means. So if you want to live by the word assume, well then why do you ask people for help? Why are you asking people to do that? Because if you know, I mean, I've helped a lot of people, but I don't like helping people where you start getting bit by them. Because a lot of people don't comprehend, they speak to stuff they don't know, and it's like you want to know, dealing with your alleged tax debt that they claim. And the other thing to the IRS, always ask them to certify their debt. Write them a letter, say we want it certified. There are court cases you could actually do that in, like the exhibit that we played here tonight. That's an actual federal exhibit that we have on the site from Congress. So you could always use the actual exhibit from Congress itself. See, when you have those things in your hands, and you're using what is called the terminology of their stuff, that is the point that you cannot sit there and go after their stuff and be wrong when you're using their information. And if you actually sit down and read the IRS code, you'll be amazed at what you actually read. See, that's the one thing that people don't pay attention to what they read. They assume what they read. And that's the problem we have right now with today. We have the worst education system in the country today. We really have the worst. You know, that's the one thing that people need to comprehend, how our court system is a failure. You know, I mean, until people start standing up, and start standing up with each other, it's like I tell people, or I don't tell anybody anything. I suggest I am not an attorney, a lawyer, or nobody. No professional. I don't claim anything. I'm not a public figure because I'm not taking a title of nobility. Because why would I want to sit there and take a title of nobility? Because when you take a title of nobility, you are saying that you are basically one of their slaves. You are saying you're not responsible for your actions. It's like a lot of people go, well, I'm going to take the Bible to court with me. Well, you're taking their book into their room. They know that book. They know what it's about. And that is the one thing that people have got to start separating themselves to know the separation of lawful and legal. So when it comes down to your taxes, ask them to certify it. Ask them to prove it. They'll always send you administrative rules. They will always send you administrative rules. And then you ask them, how does that relate to the Constitution? I do recommend that people do get a certified copy of the original Constitution from the Secretary of State. The original Constitution of your state. Not the one that they amended, because I've gone through paperwork in the state of Oregon here, or Oregon State, I should say, and I realized that they changed a lot of things, and don't forget in 2000, in Oregon State, they changed from the Oregon State to the state of Oregon, that the lawyers own all the land in the state of Oregon. That was in 2000. That was done by Kate Brown and the Bar Association. And that is the one thing that people have got to stand together. So when you go to court, you know, you want to make sure that if you're forced into their administrative court, make sure that you have as many people as you can have there. That is the one thing that you want to be able to go in with as many people as you can. Always write your affidavit for the court, especially if you're dealing with income tax or state tax. You want that affidavit to be put in record because you want your affidavit to speak for you. When a judge tries to talk to you, you refer to your affidavit. And then you refer to line so-and-so. And I do recommend when you do affidavits, especially when it goes to the legal section, to make sure that you do it on front and back of the paper, because a judge will turn the paper over and says, well, I don't see that. And that's where people have got to comprehend, because they do that, and he'll say he don't see that, and then you wonder what's going on, what, why, and how. Come on, computers, getting this message here. But, okay. And so anyhow, what I'm going to do is open up the floor to our friend Dave, and I want him to get into this court case. So Dave, go ahead.
Okay. First thing I would like to do is explain to people that whenever they take a case into court, they follow the civil rules booklet, and that's a free download online. It has all the forms and necessary paperwork you need to file your case in the court. If you notice, one of the first things that they tell you that you must do is establish their jurisdiction. Now, why would we have to establish their jurisdiction if they're a constitutional court? People don't think about this, but the only way that court can act on anyone's behalf is if you establish them as having jurisdiction. So if they're flying a gold fringe flag in their courtroom, and you need to check this out before you go there, the gold fringe flag is a martial law flag. And your judges, lawyers, attorneys know that, okay? And that's called color of law fraud. So just a heads up, okay? You can go to Dwight David Eisenhower's Executive Order 10834, again 10834, and look up the meaning of the flags of the United States. It very plainly states in Eisenhower's executive order that the gold fringe mutilates the flag and carries a 1-year prison term. Our U.S. military, I wrote them a letter, Joint Chiefs of Staff. I said, I want you to arrest every church, every library, governor's office, who is flying a gold fringe flag. Per Dwight David Eisenhower's Executive Order 10834. I didn't hear squat back from them. Okay? So the Joint Chiefs are perfectly aware what the color law fraud is going on in American courts, and they refuse to do a damn thing about it. Okay? Let's get that straight. So now Ed wanted me to touch on the court case relating to income. If you look at the IRS code, there is no lawful definition of income mentioned. Now, why would that be? Well, the Supreme Court of the United States made in the early 1900s, okay, the end of, in 1895, the Supreme Court ruled that income taxes are unconstitutional. All right? If you go to Tax Fraud in America on Facebook, that's my home page, since I couldn't get our elected and public officials to respond to my letters, faxes, emails, I just started this page for all Americans to have knowledge of the court cases. I have no clue it exists. Okay? That's the con job these bastards have been playing on us. All right, so here's what the court said. Congress, by legislation, cannot define income since it cannot alter the Constitution from which it derives its power to legislate. And there's a little bit more to it, but that's basically it. Congress is the only legislative body who writes the law. And by the way, the court said this is for all tax legislation. They defined income to be the result of corporate activity and must include the sale or conversion of a capital asset. So you and I are not corporations unless you own a business, okay? We don't have a business license, and we don't make and sell a product to where we would have a profit. So, the High Court also ruled that wage for labor is an exchange. No income is generated. So if you have a employment agreement as part of your wages, your wage for labor exchange, okay, none of it's taxable as income. The IRS don't want you to know that. The IRS, by the way, are a division of the IMF out of the United Nations. They're not a U.S. government agency, and in, I think it was 1965, the Supreme Court ran a check through the congressional record only to find out that Congress, by legislation, had not made the IRS a government agency. So that means they're a monopoly. I believe that's against the state law. So you have the IRS prove that they're a lawful government entity. I actually did some research on the IRS, and I found that they are a division of the IMF out of the United Nations. They are not. They're not a U.S. government agency. The other thing is I went to Dover, Delaware, physically drove there, went into the archives of the Library of their Congress, and dug out some facts on the IRS. And the Treaty of Peace and Friendship I found was never signed by the President of the United States. That's for all the benefit of all the Indians who are listening tonight. There is no signature on the Treaty of Peace and Friendship of the President. But getting back on track here, what I did find in the Delaware Division of Corporations, and it cost me $50 to obtain this document, the IRS lost its corporate entity in Delaware for failure to pay their corporate taxes. So if the IRS are a Delaware corporation, that means they have to register in every state of the union to do business. They must be bonded, they must have a charter and bond to do business, and a business license. So I did some research: Ohio, Indiana, Pennsylvania, Illinois, just to see what I could find if through the Division of Corporations if the IRS were listed as a corporation. Well, they're not. So that means they have no jurisdictional authority in any union state because they failed to do what the law requires of them. So we now know that the Supreme Court 1895 ruled that income taxes were unconstitutional. 1935, the Supreme Court ruled the IRS unconstitutional for the Union states. Wage for labor is an exchange, no income is generated. That's why the IRS, whenever they send you a 1040 form or any other form requiring financial information from you, they must provide you, in accordance to 44 U.S.C., Paperwork Reduction Act at 3512, they must provide you information stating that you are not required to fill out their form. And I have yet to receive one of those from the IRS. So what they do is they violate due process and make up some phony baloney 1040 debt. And by the way, in the U.S. District Court in Grand Rapids, Michigan, I'm trying to remember what the case is. Basically, the judge ruled that the 1040 form has no standing in law. But that's all on Tax Fraud in America on Facebook. So you can go through those cases and find that out. But the judge there recognized the fact that for a tax form or any other form that the IRS uses, it must be approved by the Bureau of Management and Budget. It must carry an OMB number to be lawful. And you have to remember also that since income taxes are the result of corporate activity and must include sale or conversion of a capital asset, you should be receiving from the IRS corporate tax forms, not individual. Because as individuals, you're not required to pay an income tax. So the case on that one is U.S. versus Lloyd R. Long, Federal District Court in Alabama, the defense attorney proved to the federal jury that the income tax amendment to the Constitution, the 16th Amendment, was never lawfully ratified. So therefore, that did not give Congress new taxing authority over anyone. And the whole tax system is nothing but a fraud scheme to get you to admit you have income. So they send you your tax forms with the all caps name, which is a corporation. Well, excuse me, where's my charter? Where's my bond? Where's my business license? What am I selling for profit? No, they want you to list what your wage for labor exchange is. It's the exchange income that they're wanting you to provide them. And at the bottom of the page, this is why people go to jail, okay? At the bottom of their form, their 1040, it says, I under penalty of perjury. Well, to be under penalty of perjury, you must be under oath in court. So there's a little fraud scheme going on there when it comes to I under penalty of perjury. You cannot be under penalty of perjury if you were never sworn. So what I do is on any form that says I under penalty of perjury, I mark it out with a black marker, and I never sign it. I autograph it. So if you comprehend the law, and unfortunately people don't read the Constitution, as Ed said, you'll find out that most of your elected and public servants are disobeying the administrative rules when it comes to term limits. They've established themselves as career politicians. The Constitution never gave Congress that right in the first place. And Ed and I did a study on this a couple of years ago when we were discussing the civil and revolutionary wars that took place in this country and the resulting Constitution, which proves that, well, hey, we don't have to obey the law, because what happened was the 28 U.S.C. at 3002 definition 15, United States means a federal corporation. I don't see anything in the Constitution granting to Congress the authority to make the United States a corporation. So that's fraud by trickery. And that's criminal fraud, RICO, collusion, against we the people's Constitution. And like I said last night on the call, number one, there are 4 branches of government. The first one is the constitutional government established by the Constitution of the United States, and we the people, we the men and women of this nation. Okay? So that's your first branch of government, we the people. We are the government, period. Because we established in our Constitution legislative, executive, and judicial branches of government. Okay, those entities are dead entities. They cannot function without either an elected, appointed, or hired public employee to make them run. So they're basically dead entities. If Congress doesn't want the Constitution, they just terminated their employment. So did the president. So did all the judges. So you don't want to obey the supreme law of the land, the Constitution of the United States. You just basically terminated your employment, because those offices without the Constitution don't exist. So that's basically where we're at. Now I want you to go to, if you have access to it, and you can look this up later, the authority of the Secretary of the Internal Revenue Service falls under 26 IRC, Internal Revenue Code, at 6331A. And if you look down through that, you will find that the authority of the Secretary does not pertain to, who is that now? Individuals, corporations, there's a couple more that they try to trick you into. But none of the Secretary has no such authority. The authority of the Secretary is listed in that section of the code. And these IRS agents are taught code. They're not taught law, because if they knew law, they would comprehend what the rulings of the United States Supreme Court were and how that affects their IRS code. So they're basically nothing but a bunch of stupid asses who try to trick you into admitting you have income. And I've been through this and through this and through this with the IRS and Congress in affidavits, unrebutted. So, they want to play games with me. Well, then why didn't you have enough nerve to answer the affidavit? Tell the truth. We sent the affidavit to all the way up to the Supreme Court. Ed and I did. Well, no response. Why? Because they knew we spoke the truth, and they couldn't rebut it. So the IRS have no standing in law in any union state, because as a corporation, they're not registered to do business. And under the Paperwork Reduction Act, they must inform you that you are not required to fill out their paperwork. So now they've got the new trick. Easy Tax and what's the other one, Ed?
TurboTax.
Yeah, TurboTax. You see, as long as you make the confession, they don't have to tell you that you're not required to fill out the paperwork. See how that little fraud scheme works? So if you're filing a 1040 EZ or 1040 through the TurboTax, you're screwing yourself. What you need to file is a 1040X form, which gives you back all your money you paid in. And people need to look that up online, because I'm telling you right now, I don't know how long it'll be online once they find out the people are onto it. So there was a lot of things happened in the Bankruptcy Act of 1932.
33.
Well, it started in 32.
Well, that's true. It started in 32. We've proven that.
And unless you study the Bankruptcy Act itself and know the con jobs that they did for you, being that they're such loving individuals, it's rape, rob, and pillage, just like Ed and I have said in the past. So that's basically it, Ed. I hope I've covered it to the point where people comprehend what I'm trying to tell them. Tax Fraud in America on Facebook is pretty much the Bible. This was all information we put in affidavits to Congress and the President. I attended the hearing on taxation in 2002. That was supposed to be a redress a grievance. It was brought to Congress by We the People Foundation for Constitutional Education. Robert Schultz was the president. Larry B. Kraft. There was Joe Bannister. There was a bunch of people who filed a redress agreements with Congress. Well, I drove all the way to D.C. to attend that hearing, and, well, they bounced us from this hearing room to that hearing room, and we went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Well, it ended up they never they never allowed us to present our grievance. We sent them 300 questions in advance relating to income taxes. So basically, Congress committed an act of treason against the Constitution by not allowing the people redress a grievance. And what should have taken place after we got bounced out of Washington was that Schultz and company should have filed high treason against Congress for violation of due process. But that didn't happen. But then you have to remember that Larry B. Kraft is an attorney and probably ill-advised Schultz and them. But from the information that Larry B. Kraft himself presented at the hearing, and we went ahead and had the hearing, we rented a room at one of the hotels, a big conference room, and we went ahead and had the hearing by ourselves. I even called my three stooges in Washington, and they're supposed to be representatives. At that time it was Oxley, Devine, Voinovich. I called them and told them, I said, hey, we're having a meeting over here on the redress agreements. If you guys want to come and help co-chair it. I didn't hear one word from them. The only one I heard anything from was Ike Oxley, and he said he couldn't come because he had previous engagements. I find it interesting that we had a hearing scheduled, but Oxley goes ahead and makes arrangements for some other thing to keep him away from the hearing. Doesn't sound to me like he's being too honest. Of course, he's dead now, but I just wanted to give you some background as to the bullshit that was flying around in Washington at that time. So, and they haven't changed anything. Anytime you and I address a letter to them, they ignore it 90% of the time. So, what good are these supposed representatives who are not doing the job we're paying them to do? They need to lose their federal funding. So,
and be prosecuted.
I have 10 boxes of letters addressing to the President, Vice President, Congress, various and sundry judicial committees, whatever. It all falls on deaf ears. Ed will admit that our affidavits never get any response. So,
well, the only one that really got any response was the one we did on the Constitution, separation of lawful and legal in the country.
Well, yeah, that's true. We did on that one.
And that's why Judge Scalia was murdered, because of the information that he knew, because they were going to indict Obama, and now all of a sudden Judge Scalia gets found with a pillow over his face. That was always interesting.
Yeah.
How do you commit suicide?
Wasn't it also interesting that there was no guard outside his door?
Well, yeah, it was interesting how all of a sudden everybody left that day.
That Obama was the last known person to see him before his supposed death.
Yeah, 3 hours before he died.
So did the guard? Was the guard the one who actually killed him?
Don't know. Nobody really knows.
But he sure as hell wasn't at his post, was he?
Absolutely not.
So, but we wanted to cover that murder up, so we had him cremated right away, so there wouldn't be an autopsy performed.
Yeah, no evidence.
That's right. But that's how they play the game, ladies and gentlemen. What was it, Hillary? There was some kind of testimony to be done against Hillary, and they crashed a plane to prevent that witness from appearing. There were like 40-some people got killed in that one. So these people are so crooked and dangerous, they're willing to kill innocent people just to save their ass. So it would appear, that there's something crooked going on, but God forbid we the people ever find out about it, because the judges won't let anything in court that would prove the corruption. That's why they're pseudo corporate courts. If you check your attorney and judge out, they're all traded on Dun & Bradstreet as corporations. So I proved that in my case. I investigated the judge. He's registered as a corporation on D&B. So that's conflict of interest. The judge gets 25% of all the money going into the court. So he's going to rule in favor of the court every time. So if you check out Inn of Court, I think it's page 805, Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. The term Inn of Court, you find it.
You're fading away, Dave.
What's that?
You're better now, but you were fading away.
Okay. Well, you'll find anyway that under Inn of Court, they're all what they consider barristers, tax collectors for the crown. So why do we have barristers sitting on our judicial branches in court? And the clerk of the courts are of the church. I'm wanting to say canon law, and I know that's not it. They're Jesuits, and Jesuit will lie, kill, and steal to protect the church. Go read the Oath of the Jesuit. You want to get sick, go read the Oath of the Jesuit.
Mm-hmm.
And these Jesuits are put in charge of the clerks of the courts offices in our nation. I think.
And the Treasury.
Go ahead, Ed.
Well, I was saying they're also put in front of the state treasuries too.
Well, yeah. So why are foreigners choosing our candidates for office? I believe you find that through the Democratic Party. I'm not so sure the Republican Party isn't behind it as well, but I've never checked into them. But I don't like liars, cheats, and thieves running my government. So anyway, that's basically the background, ladies and gentlemen. I think Ed and I have done a lot of research on this. I know the We the People Foundation came up with those 60 key case rulings of the Supreme Court that aren't found in the IRS code, which means they're running a swindle fraud job against everybody who enters their court. They're running a bond, CUSIP, and commodities fraud because they're selling your case on Dun & Bradstreet for profit. They're putting bonds and in court. They're creating bonds. The courts are creating bonds. So where's their commodities license? The prosecutor is a hearsay witness because he's getting all his information from other people and then taking it into court like, oh, I represent the people of the state. Well, I'm sorry, God, I don't consent to that. You don't tell me this guy's, you're representing the state of Ohio against this guy. That's an assumption that they're not allowed to take. So they're bringing this poor sucker into court as a corporation, a dead entity, so he can't fight for himself. And that's the fraud scheme. That's why you hire an attorney, because once you hire the attorney, you're telling the court, well, I'm too incompetent to represent myself. So I have to hire this bozo to represent me.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the definition of lawyer, Ed?
Liar.
Liar.
course, we've always recommended another solution. Make sure your representative represents you in court. Even
that's even better. And you can also have the governor represent you in court.
That's right, because they're already prepaid.
That's right. And they took an oath to support and defend the Constitution, did they not?
That's what they claim.
So then they better know the law, hadn't they?
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing the courts never do, is tell you what law they're practicing against you in court. So how can you defend yourself if you go to court if you don't know what law they're practicing against you?
Mm-hmm. On the other point, me and Dave did put up a 38-page history instrument on Executive Order 10834. And that's on our sites.
Yes, we did.
So that way there wouldn't be a conflict of interest for anybody involved, including a judge when they read it. And we even put the judge's sentence in it, that what he has to do, 1 year minimum in prison, beside paying a hefty fine. They wrote it, we quoted it.
That's right.
So we're not arguing with them, we just quote what they wrote.
That's the part they don't like, Ed, when we quote what they wrote.
Damn,
you're not supposed to know that shit.
Well, we're not supposed to have the knowledge to speak up for ourselves either.
That's right. And a lot of people don't realize that when the prosecutor comes into court, he's carrying a bond with him. And you have the right to demand of the judge that he settle that case from that bond immediately. Because what they're trying to do is they're trying to steal that bond from you, denying you access to the court.
That's right.
There's a name for it. Shoot, why can't I think of it? I think I wrote it down somewhere. Let me give me a minute. I'll look here and see if I can find it.
Okay, but see, that's the one thing. You know, I'm glad Dave is feeling a little bit better than what he did after his stroke, but this is the bottom line, that is doing your research. Quit relying on others. And I know I've been one of those that have done things, you know, myself, and then all of a sudden I had to go pay attention and went, oh, I did this, I did that, I did that wrong, I did this wrong. So it is knowing the circumstances of what you are actually doing compared to what you are thinking you're doing. Once you comprehend the knowledge for you to stand up and know your rights, not privileges. And that is the one thing, is there is a separation of privilege and rights. And they're not going to tell you this. You know, especially any of your elected and public employees, because if they told you this, okay, then that way they would be out of a job. And they know it. These people do know this stuff. This is not just something that is random. This is something that is real, factual, information. States it. So that is the main point, is comprehending what the truth is compared to the misinformation we get, the fantasy we're taught in wagons, at taxpayers' expense. So, and they do this stuff on a regular basis. This is nothing new. So, and that's how they end up getting the money to do this stuff, is by you giving your assets over to them. And that's what they rely on, is your assets. Because remember, elected and public employees don't have assets anyways. So they have to rely on your assets to pay the way for them. And that's what they do, make sure that you have your assets for them. They don't care about anything else. They're so used to rape, robbing, and pillaging, and they know this for a fact. So did you find that, Dave?
No, I haven't. I'm not sure where I put it.
Well, when you get it. But this is the point
I
that...
I wrote it on the cover of one of the books.
Okay.
That I use pretty regular, and I haven't found that book yet.
Okay. But this is the one thing that to bring out to the point of recognition to people so they comprehend the truth of these things, what goes on. Because a lot of stuff, like I said, and I repeat myself, and I don't have a problem repeating myself when it comes to how we've been wrongfully educated, brainwashed, mentally challenged. So when people get upset when somebody says, well, you're mentally challenged, I don't get upset. Why am I going to get upset? Because, hey, there are things I don't know. So I have to think about it. I have to figure it out. I have to come to the conclusions of things. So those are the things that we have to work with each other. It's like when people go to court. You know, it's like people need to comprehend this stuff. That's why I was bringing up with Mary. Did you find it? No. Yeah, that's why I was bringing up this point with Mary Jo White, former chair of the Exchange Committee, Exchange and Commerce, or Commission, I mean. The Securities and Exchange Commission. She is the former chair of that. She's the one that came out and recently, 2-3 years ago, and realized and committed and proved that the entire court system is nothing but a fraud. That came from a judge that publicly admitted it, who even ran the Securities and Exchange Commission. See, people are waking up. They really are waking up. But see, when they wake up, it's not pointing the finger going, ha, 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 ha. It's working with these men and women going, okay, now how do we start making amends to the others that didn't, who were screwed in the due process? Not screwed with due process, screwed without due process. They didn't get a court case. They didn't get a trial by jury. They got a trial by a judge and by a corporation member that is dictating them that, you know, you're to live by them under the small c 14th Amendment. And so when you start putting these pieces together, it's like, what year was this? This was written from the Justice Department warns local courts about illegal enforcement of fees and fines. This was written in February 14th, 2016. So they were telling the local police departments you cannot kidnap and assault people and hold them for ransom for their rights to travel, for their anything that they're doing, even their own property and land. You don't have a right to do that. And I think we have that up on the Facebook. If not, we'll get that up on the Facebooks and stuff. I know I've posted it many, many times over the years since it came out, and that is the one thing that people need to realize. And also, too, the other court case, even when it comes to your income tax or whatever they want to do, we have the other one. Judge rules government debt is covered by the FDCPA insurance fund. What does that derive from? The 192 House of Resolution Act. You know, House Resolution 192. All debts are covered.
It's Fair Debt Reduction Act, right, Ed?
Yep. That came out because of that, yeah.
No.
Because that court case came out in December of 2014. And so I put that in our newsletter, or the other one I'm sending out with the 14th Amendment letter, so people get it.
Well, the Supreme Court ruled that all courts are crooked, so how much more proof do we need?
Very true. And how come people do not comprehend the truth? That's the other thing that gets to me a lot, is that people do not comprehend the truth. They want to sit there and argue things. Because like I was talking to another gentleman the last couple of days, a couple people I've talked to the last couple of days, and we were discussing, it's amazing how all these people know their Bible, but they don't know the Constitution. They just don't know their Constitution. But they'll quote you the Bible. They'll quote you what they consider as their knowledge. They say that they have all this power because of this book. But see, the Constitution gives lawful bloodline Americans and legal citizens. Legal citizens have rights. Lawful Americans have rights. Legal citizens have privileges. But the Constitution does protect immigration on that, so long as they do their paperwork and they follow through with the structure that they're supposed to follow through with. So it's not like the Constitution protects all these immigrants. It protects them because the only way it does is they have to pay that protection, pay the privilege to be in our country until their bloodline's the fifth generation. I just read Illinois just came up and said the entire state of Illinois is a sanctioned state. All immigrants come to Illinois. I read that and I'm sitting there going, oh my God. Same thing with California did, and people don't comprehend the damage that does, because they're writing new birth certificate, new security exchange certificates that have no value, and they're putting these people's names on it, and they're billing it to you and your property taxes. And people in Illinois haven't even got their property taxes. Wait till they get their property taxes and they realize how much they're paying. See, that's the one thing that people do not comprehend, how these things actually work, how these things come together. So the only way we're going to protect our country is by we the people protecting it, because nobody else is going to protect it. It is trying to determine what kind of military we have today. Because it's like, I've talked to a lot of military men, and they say, well, we took a constitutional oath, and then you ask them what the Constitution is. And I love it when their response is, well, you know. Well, that's why I'm asking you. Because these men and women are supposed to know what their job is, what their job in standing is. And remember, it's their job in standing. And they have an obligation, an employment obligation to we the people.
Well, you got to remember, Ed, they're flying those gold fringe flags, which is the martial law flag that puts the military in charge of the government.
Yep.
So you tell me they don't know how to do their job, or are they just acting stupid?
Oh, they know their job. They'd much rather be rape, robbing, and pillaging. There's more income from that than it is doing their job.
Yeah.
Well, because I remember the days when, 30 years ago, an average cop would make maybe 10 grand a year. Maybe 10 grand, but they had 100% medical for them and their family, burial for them and their family. They had 100% medical coverage straight across the board, no co-pays, no nothing. Today, the average cop makes a minimum $65,000 a year. And they'll tell you, no, we don't. We start at this came out. Bullshit. I know. I have family who are cops. So don't lie to me, because I've done the research. Been around the system. Don't know the system. I hate it when these people try to sit there and they try to convince you that this ain't what it is. And people have got to wake up and start working with each other, protecting each other. And that's the whole point. Now, like I said, I put out this thing, this instrument to the entire House and Senate of the state of Oregon. I individually emailed it to each one. And I asked them who owns the children. Because we have a right to know what they're claiming, who owns the children. So that is the main point, is knowing who owns the children. What branch of government they're claiming owns the children. And so I laid it out: legislative, executive, and executive, and then the first branch of we the people. Who owns the children? So we'll see what kind of reaction I get here this coming week. And whatever letters I get on it, I will be putting up on the site. So that way people can see it. So that way it's not just we're not talking hearsay. We're going to be able to, whatever comes in. But let's not forget, we do have some elected and public officials who are honorable. And so with those honorable elected and public officials, we need to make sure that they know the truth. We need to make sure that they need to know what the truth is. So that way there's not a conflict. Most of my emails that I do out, I email to the United States Marshals and the FBI on a regular basis. Because I figured, hey, if they want to know what I'm doing, here's what I'm doing. I don't need to, they know that I'm not bashful. They know that.
Neither one of us are bashful, Ed.
I didn't hear you.
I said, I think they know that neither one of us are bashful.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's one thing that every time me and Dave have done paperwork, and if I don't get it filed in the state of Oregon, at least, if I don't get it filed, at least I always get it stamped received. So that might mean they might not be able to react to it, but at least they have it in their possession, and they know that it was served.
Yeah, that they definitely know.
You're talking too far away from the phone, Dave.
That they definitely know.
Yeah. And that is the point. When you're serving these instruments of protecting your rights, and like I said, when I did all the paperwork that me and Dave served out, I hung them up on the county commissioner wall. I publicized them in the local district attorney's office, hung them on the public bulletin board. In a couple cities around me, I drove around or traveled around and hung them up on their bulletin boards, the public bulletin boards. And that way they couldn't sit there and deny it. So you want to make sure they don't deny the truth.
Well, the courts
They cannot deny the truth. Oh, my Lord, then they have to act. They have to be responsible. Well, supposed to be responsible. But that's the point, is knowing what's legal and what's lawful. Legal is religious Vatican Church. Knowing the separation of your lawful rights. Because the Supreme Court has said on many, many court cases, the police have no rights to protect you. And then people will call the police and they drive up and then they shoot the one that the perpetrator, and I call it the perpetrator the way I look at it, because several women have called the police on the out-of-control kids. The cop drives up and shoots the kid. And they're like, well, what did you do that for? We didn't call you to shoot our kid. And it's like he was out of control. That's the way we handle it. And people got to realize that is your police departments today.
Well, actually, if they shoot the kid, we can charge them with cruelty to animals, Ed.
Well, that's true. Yeah, we've got that one.
Because Congress made man an animal.
That's right. Title 7, 136, Section D.
That's right. So if the police officer shoots an animal, that's what ground did he have to shoot him?
Well, it's when they kidnap you and held you for ransom. That's cruelty to the animal, encaging an animal. You got all these animal activists that want to do all these things right and call people up and, get them arrested. I'm wondering why they're not doing that to the police departments.
Well, they haven't thought of that, Ed.
Well, if they did that, I don't believe that they could make their income of donations. Because income of donations is more important than we the people.
Yeah. Well, Melissa and I recently filed 2 court cases or 2 complaints with the FBI in Cleveland, Ohio. We were supposed to have a response the following Monday. It's now been over 2 months. We haven't heard jack diddly from them. So I wrote Mr. Trump and told him I wanted their federal funding pulled for not doing the job we're paying them to do. I haven't heard anything back from him either.
Yeah.
So if we the people happen to, we have the right to demand service from the people we put in office to protect us,
Right.
What good are they? They're nothing more than a rotten potato in the bottom of the barrel.
Mm-hmm.
You get rid of it. You don't want to do the job we're paying you to do, then, hey, we don't need you.
That's right.
Bye. So,
And that's one thing people got to realize that point.
right.
It's like Gun Owners of America and all these people, they're out for income.
Yeah.
Misery creates income.
Well, the matter of these assault rifles, okay?
Alleged rifles, because it's their terminology.
It's kind of like this. This is the way I kind of look at that. The new law that they want to write banning those is not actually a violation of the Second Amendment. And the reason for that is very simple. Mr. Trump did not ban all weapons or guns from the people.
Mm-hmm.
He's banning a certain type. But the lawful owners of those guns currently would be grandfathered in on any change to the amendment or the law.
If I
Well,
may?
the other thing on that, Dave, it depends on which citizenship you are under.
If I may? If I may?
Go ahead, Nick.
They're not guns. They're arms.
Oh, what a correction.
That's a good point, and thank you for correcting me. So if they are arms, let's see, there's 2 parts to that Second Amendment, and people seem to forget about the second part of it, the right to form a militia. How are you going to form a militia if you're unarmed?
Well, and this is the other thing that disturbs me, because people says, oh, I'm going to get this up. What was it called? It was 1717. Let me go back here. Because 1717 was, 1773 was the first machine gun ever made. Fully functional machine gun. It was called the pickle gun. And people say, well, they didn't have that type of weaponry before the Revolutionary War. They sure did. Manufacture date of production on it was 1718, fully functional, out to the general public. So they had machine guns back there. That's an assault weapon, as they would consider. But then the people say, well, you're not allowed to have a machine gun. Yeah, well, in the United States, you're allowed to have a flamethrower. You don't have to get licensed. There's a lot of things that people don't realize that they have a right to, but they actually have a right to, not a privilege. But standing up for a right, that's where people get scared. It's like this one Republican now. Let me get his name here. I pulled it up a minute ago. Now, we got a federal Republican that publicly announced just recently here that health care, food are a privilege. Wait a minute, food and health care? I thought the Constitution said life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That was millionaire Republican Senator Ron Johnson tells a group of high school students that health care and food are a privilege. I mean, these guys are sitting there telling people that food and water is a privilege of life.
It's a necessity of life, Edward.
I know that. But these guys are convincing children today that it's a privilege to live. And if you don't do what the government tells you to do, it's a privilege that you have to die for us to survive because you never made it.
Well, you have to remember that the government did not create us. Therefore, they cannot regulate us.
Mm-hmm.
So all that gentleman is saying is nothing but horse hockey.
Yeah, but these poor kids are listening to this crap across the country.
That's because they're not taught the Constitution anymore.
That's right.
God help us.
You know? I mean, that's the one thing that just sort of disturbs me, that people get away with the stuff they get away with. You know, that's the other thing that disturbs me, and people don't comprehend what life really is about. You know, and that's the other point. And, you know, I mean, I just went through, of course, you know, I don't immunize my dog all the time like some people do. But they just prove that immunizing your dog all the time can kill your dog, just like immunizations for humans can kill humans. And we're going to have a thing on our Facebook site eventually put up on that, because I got, 20 cases that I was able to put up on. So, I mean, this is the one thing that people have to realize. What our system of our elected and public employees are truly about. And once people start comprehending, you know, that you have rights, not privileges, and you learn how to file your rights, own yourself. You know, I was talking to a gentleman earlier, and it's like, well, a lot of people done their UCC filings. Well, I did my UCC filing totally different. I filed it, then I owned it. And then anybody uses any of my information, that's identity theft. Simple. See, I'm not going to sit there and go start using it or play that game, because too many people use it, ended up in jail. Until I actually see a realistic process that me and Dave have actually discussed over the last several years. We're not out trying to put anybody in jail. We want people to comprehend what the truth is. That's why we do all of our research. That's why we've got a lot of hard knocks on us, a lot of mileage on us from going through the hard knocks. So these are the points that bring forward. So, but anyhow, we've been going on. We should open the floor for questions, too. If anybody would like to throw some thoughts in or anything like that, or if they have questions on how they want to get out of the filings. And by the way, when you do a W-4 form for employment, all W-4 forms have on the employment structure. It's very, very simple. It's called a box says exempt. Check it.
Make out a new one.
Claim
exempt. I said go in, make out a new one, and claim exempt. They got to stop taking the taxes out of your paycheck immediately.
That's all taxes.
That's right.
FICs and all that stuff. And you don't have to participate in Social Security unless you want to. Ray,
all participants are unmuted.
That's true.
The floor is open.
You're currently involved in paying Social Security, and you don't want to. You can opt out.
Yep. Let's open up the floor, Dave. The floor is open for anybody who wants to speak.
Ed,
Yes.
on that 1040X, is there a statute of limitations?
No.
No.
You can go all the way back to the beginning when you first started paying taxes. One per year.
Hmm. And you have to do one per year. And I'll even tell you that on the form.
Also,
So,
when
yeah.
they do,
Go ahead.
I was going to say also, when you said that they commit identity theft, I know there's not a statute of limitations for fraud, but is there one for that identity theft also?
Nope. Because you don't know when somebody else is using that identity again, or if they never corrected the theft that they did the first time. So it continues. And that has to be filed with the Trade Commission.
And anyone caught using your Social Security number, that's a violation too. 42 USC. Help me out here, Ed.
Well, I know that Title 42 USC 408 Section 8A or Section A8 clearly states that if you give out your Social Security number, it's a federal crime. And when I do my newsletter out when I do that for Facebook and I send my newsletter out for the talk shows every week, it's actually in that 9 pages of the structure I have in the newsletter.
And by the way, the IRS use your Social Security number at will, without your knowledge and consent.
Unless you file for them not to.
Well, I sent them the copy of the law under 42, so that's pretty much telling them, hey, stop this bullshit.
Well, I did that through the identity theft when I filed my identity theft.
Okay.
So, I mean, I did that when I did my identity theft, and I get that, I keep that up too. And you always want to keep those things up, especially when you file identity theft. If you don't maintain it every 30 days, they want to boot you so they can close the file and end it because they don't want to keep those files open. So within every 30 days, I have to redo my identity theft case and put the evidence in. And right now, I'm getting ready to send them the letter structured in that, so that way they have that information, the updated what's going on with the county.
Okay.
Because property taxes, when they use your name, that's identity theft too.
Yeah, whenever they put it in all caps, it sure as hell is.
Right.
Well, you know, the one thing I noted on my Social Security card, because I still have the original one I filled out, my name is not in the all caps name anywhere on that form.
Same with mine.
So anytime they are taking your name, hello, and switching it to the all caps name, that's identity theft.
And that's the one thing you want to pay attention to. You really want to pay attention to those things. Because like I always preach, it's your responsibility. It is no one else's responsibility. So it's very simple when you sit there and claim your rights and start proceeding with it. You know, it's like when I always love it when when a tax assessor came to my door one year when I put my house up, and says, I want to come in your house and I want to look at all your assets and values so I can make an asset. And I looked at him and I says, no, you don't. The law says get off my land or else I can shoot you. And he goes, you just threatened me. I said, no, I didn't. I told you what I was going to do. So he scurried off my land real quick.
Uh-huh.
So those are things that people have got to pay attention to what goes on in our country, in our communities. But I don't like using the word community because it is the structure of a foreign country. And that's the one thing that, you know, it is about learning what the wording and the word use are. Because, I mean, I'm rewriting some of my instruments today because it's like using the word inhabitant. That's their word, not our word. And it's learning these things of who, what, why, and how. And that is the point. Once you start putting this stuff together, and you start putting the correct English put together, the correct writing put together, things start coming together in a different point of view. And you start thinking differently when you start really doing this stuff. You really start thinking differently. And that really helps for yourself because then when you start talking, your English starts correcting itself because you're being more conscious of your wording.
Right. Well, it's the fraud by trickery. What's your birthday? Well, I was born, not birthed. So how is it they want to tie me to a dock under Admiralty law?
Well, and that's the one thing when I call up the doctor's office, they go, "What's your birthday?" And they start, and I go, "What?" Of course, now they go, "Okay, Ed, we know." And your doctors do know the birth certificate bond is an insurance bond. They know it. I've had honorable physicians bluntly tell me, yeah, we know this.
Yeah. So why are you swindling me? Demanding double payment.
That is the point. Why are you swindling me? That's why, you know, it's not mandatory by law to get a birth certificate for a newborn. Show me the law. But I always suggest to people, file this before you go to the hospital. If you don't file this stuff before you go to the hospital, and the hospital staff is aware of this stuff, because I've got people who have actually filed their stuff when they went to the hospital, they didn't have an issue.
Okay.
You know, but it's filing it, especially with a newborn, before you get there.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, look what happened when we confronted the county coroner on our death certificates.
Everybody panicked on that. Nobody sure wanted to answer that call, did they?
Well, they did not. I mean, Ed and I just simply asked the county coroner, well, since you declared our certificate of live birth dead, where are we buried? What was our cause of death?
Yep, please verify that.
Yeah.
Never heard anything back from them, but, man, I called them up, and they're like, well, Mr. Johnson, we got that information, and we don't know what you're talking about, so we have no comment when it comes to you. And I said, so in other words, you're stating you don't own my body. And they said, well, your body is your body. I said, I just wanted to clarify that.
And our birth bond and certificate of live birth, those two bonds, you know, I find it interesting that over $1 million total, but between the two, I'm almost $2 million. Okay, in our name, they declare the citizen dead and then steal your bond.
And then they sit there and use that to go after your taxes on you for state, federal, and local taxes.
Yeah. And then you're turning around and paying them at the sales counter. So that's double dipping. But God forbid we confront them on it.
Yeah, they don't want the truth.
You buy a new car, they automate it. Once you give that your Social Security number out, they go in there and get paid for it, and then they turn around and want you to pay monthly payments on it.
Right. That's a fact.
These damn car dealerships are, no wonder these guys are making money hand over fist. Same with Congress. They're stealing, somebody dies, they're stealing their bonds. I wonder why they go in poor as Job's Turpy and come out richer and, you know. Then they want you to pay them a retirement fund on top of it.
Hmm. And they're already using the assets of your income.
Yeah.
Remember, your birth certificate is income supposed to be going to you, not to them.
That's right. I mean, the national debt's the money the government owes us because we never gave the corporation permission to use our name, good faith, and credit to fund them.
That's right.
So, therefore, you know, they can start making payments to me every month.
Yep.
Until they got it paid back. Then it can become part of my estate if and when I should happen to die before they have it paid back.
Hmm.
That way they can't say we were rape, robbing, and pillaging you.
Right.
Everything Congress does is an act of war against us, people. Plain and simple. They're not representing us, they're misrepresenting us.
That's right. And they know this stuff.
Well, we've confronted them enough, they ought to know it by now.
Hmm. Yeah, we do get this stuff out. We've been doing this ourselves for years, making sure people know the truth. And so, and then when you look back at some of the stuff that we looked at, oh, okay, now all of a sudden we realize some of the stuff we did wasn't probably correct. But that's why you always put in your instruments that the only one who can alter it is the living man or woman who wrote it.
Well, you got to remember we put in that constitutional criminal complaint, and I haven't seen anything happen on that. Have you?
No, well, I've seen some changes. Have
you?
Yeah, through the administrative rules and stuff. I've seen changes administratively.
Alrighty.
But that's as far as that has gone.
Okay. But to receive any kind of documentation relating to that instrument from Congress, the judicial, or executive branches, I haven't seen one claim.
No, I know that. We haven't seen a claim, but we've been watching administrative rules changing, and some have actually been for the better. So they don't want a lot of this stuff out.
Yep. Excuse me.
And that's the one thing when it comes down to these things. Is doing this stuff so it benefits yourself. See, everybody goes on to this, well, I want to do a class action lawsuit. And I've had people want to do class action lawsuits going against the government, like even a tax deal. I was talking to a guy 6 months ago about that. And it's like, you don't get this point. Why are you talking about a class action lawsuit? If it goes into court, the judge could throw everything out of it. You know, you're not... Go ahead.
It's called not allowing evidence against them in court to establish a key case. It's called protecting your good old boys.
Yep. So So, anyhow, Dave, you know, I'm looking at the clock. It's like 7 minutes till.
Okay.
So I'm thinking about if nobody else would like to speak up, because anybody, because as far as I know, the board was open. Anybody could have chimed in. So seeing that, you know, they don't, you know, they're not willing to chime in right now. That's fair. We comprehend that one. Go ahead.
Ed, it's David in Orlando. What's up with getting the information on the judge and the Dun & Bradstreet information? Do you have to get a membership or subscription, or does anybody have access to that without a charge?
Actually, what I did, I went into D&B and clicked on, I forgot what link it was now, but in there, that'll take you to the corporations, and you can run your judge on that. By the way, the American Bar Association is registered as a communist organization on D&B.
So, yeah, that's one way to do it. We do have the Dun & Bradstreet link on new.org and trackers, and you can always run their name on it because they'll come up underneath their name, and we do have on that, too, I believe, the DUNS numbers for all the courts.
And what was the first site that Dave mentioned? I didn't catch it. My phone blanked.
Oh, it's you just go into Dun & Bradstreet, and it'll take you into their website, and then you can check out the different areas. Then you can run your judge's name on it.
Without a fee?
Yeah, without a fee.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, thanks for sharing the information tonight. It was informative.
Well, yeah, and also, too, like I said, we do have Dun & Bradstreet link on new.org and trackers. And to my comprehension, when you click onto that, you want to run the background check on somebody, it's free on that.
All right, cool. Thanks a million.
You know, because that is the one point to get to know what your judge's bonds are, their insurance policies. See, it's like my county, they ended up doing their own insurance policy because they went bankrupt too many times.
Yeah, I may have given you some bad information. It's Trial Lawyers Incorporated. It's registered as a communist organization on D&B, not the American Bar. It's Trial Lawyers, Inc.
Gotcha.
I want to make that correction before I get sued.
Yeah, that's a big difference from the American Bar.
Yeah.
The bottom line is you can validate somehow that they're all foreign agents, right?
That's right. That's exactly right.
How do you go about? How do you do that?
The in-court definition of in-court proves they're unregistered foreign agents. They ran for public office without declaring the fact that they were a foreign agent. All these common pleas court judges and the probate court and all that, yeah.
What about their?
If they didn't register as a foreign agent when they ran for public office, that's voter fraud.
What about their mission statement, Ed?
Oh, yeah, that's another valid point. You always want to get the courts and their mission statements. Go in personally, preferably, and you want it certified. Because you'll find out their mission statement is definitely different than the that they handle their court cases on.
It's a communist mission statement.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it all democracy?
Yeah.
Not Republican.
If you're under democracy, you're committing treason against the Constitution.
Yeah, but let him finish, Dave. Go ahead.
I just said it's not Republican in form.
Right.
Hey, you guys are doing good tonight. You're doing good, Dave and Ed. Enjoy listening to you. That's all.
Hey, if I can follow up, Ed.
Go ahead.
So, Dave, you're in Florida. Did I understand?
No, I'm back in Ohio right now. I'm getting ready to move down to Florida.
All right. So here's a specific. And I'll just use some generalities due to the recording. But, okay, in a case, submitting documents, attempting to validate the cess decay, the seed and estate posture, etc. They bring in some heavy weight attorneys, international firm, to slap me down. The judge receives an order from the hotshot attorney to require us to submit to a bar attorney for signing on documents due to the allegation that they're frivolous and allegedly a waste of judicial resources. So first off, there's a judge that a month ago basically granted that order. Are you familiar with Florida rules at all, or no?
I have not studied Florida at all.
All right. Well, rules of civil procedure. You have some sort of time frame.
They're the federal rules of civil procedure booklet is what you need to look up. And that will tell you how to file your case. It has all the forms. It has the cover sheets. It has absolutely everything you need to file a case in the court. And one of the things you want to do as you're filing your case in the court is you want to put your exhibits into the case as you file it. And that way, the judge can't say, well, I don't see what you're saying. And like Ed said, make sure you print it on both sides of the paper, because what their trick is, they want you to print it on all one side. Then they flip it face down and they go, I don't see what you're saying here. I'm not seeing your point. Then the next thing you know, they got it thrown out of court for failure to state a claim.
All right.
So that's how they play the con game.
Part of their arsenal. How would you respond in theory to a judge's order requiring that we get, again, incompetent status and inability to file our own documents?
When they pulled that crap on me.
Say it again.
I say what I did in my court case was I wrote a letter to the judge stating that I did not accept his contract offer. Because you have to remember things about contracting with the court.
Mm-hmm.
And then you know.
Now, in this particular document, it appears to be written by a judge's clerk based upon numerous inconsistencies. The first one being, for example, in all court case headings, it's always the all-cap entity or the juridic person being charged, right?
And that's the identity theft.
Right. Okay, well, I'd like you to elaborate on that in a minute. But have you ever seen a mix, capitis de minimis, or whatever it is, upper and lower case in this document?
They'll name you as the corporation on the cover sheet, and then name you in your personal upper lower case name in the. So how can you be one person one place and another person the other?
Well, and what's interesting is the attorney had alleged we were using, and apparently there's a substantial amount of case law out there, which I came across a recent one today, but there's a big Canadian case where they've systematically gone through and point by point attempted to mitigate or ameliorate or denigrate the whole status issue by alleging, in Meads. Are you familiar with Meads versus Meads?
A little bit I am.
Yeah, basically that's what they were saying, that they went through. If I look at my notes here, I can tell you the verbiage they used. But where I was kind of going with that was it appeared that in this order that was particularly an indication of them mixing, if you will, like you said, that at one point in time they're charging the entity, which happens to be a a pre-marriage name. So they're going after my wife and her pre-marriage name, but then later on they reference her current, it's like formerly known as FKA and then now known as NKA, notations through the heading. But then below, again, they're using our true person name, or true individual name, rather, and not the corporate person, but the man or the woman.
Well, that's
the corporate name is a dead entity.
Right.
It exists in name only. So your all caps name is a dead entity. Go to if you want proof of that, go to your cemetery and look at the name on the tombstone.
Oh, I understand. And,
all caps name.
Yeah, I understand. We're basically students of I Am Some Dude's Boris, and his methodology is based upon an affidavit, that states the facts and a half a dozen documents and so on, that you're stating the facts, that you understand. In this court case, you come in special appearance versus general, and then you're standing upon an affidavit.
I understand. I comprehend. That way you don't fall under their jurisdiction.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, you guys, entiende, right. So in Spanish, it's a little easier, but in English, I slip into that. But anyways, so first off, in Meads versus Meads, they call it a pseudo legal commercial argument, organized pseudo commercial argument, OPCA, and there's a very extensive amount of case information here with regard to how they selectively broke it down, and they even went into, in this particular case, and this is not new. If I recall correctly, and they're quoting an 08 case, I don't know if there's a date on this. Let me see. 2013, Meads versus Mead, 2012. And basically, in the first paragraph, they kind of break it down. The court has developed a new awareness and understanding of a category of vexatious litigants. And we shall see, while there is often a lack of homogeneity and some individuals or groups have no name or special identity, they, by their own admission or by description of given names, often fall into the following descriptions, and then they break it down. I've never seen that word before. Detixers, freemen or freemen on the land, sovereign citizens, and I'll just stop there. We're of a religious order, so we basically presented ourselves as ecclesiastical sovereign. So in this defense that we presented, the offense, a hot shot attorney from the international firm comes in and initially put in paperwork that they were going to allege that we were sovereign citizens, an oxymoron, a big gulp, a jumbo shrimp, and I don't even know what the hell that even means. But, we were just simply indicating that we're...
The United States ruled that men and women are sovereign, not sovereign citizens, sovereignty. So where people are making their mistakes is that they're saying we are a sovereign citizen. Stop that bullshit.
We've never said that. I'm just saying we've indicated that we're sovereign with God, and they interpreted that as personality. They literally said multiple personalities in one of the documents. But where I'm at is tomorrow is 30 days from the date that the judge issued the order. In the order, there is no specificity with regard to you have to obtain counsel within 30 days, 45 days, nothing along these lines. And I'm guessing, as sleazy as these SOBs are, and you mentioned the 25%, I'd love to find information on how you have ascertained that a judge obtains 25% of the, let's say if it's a foreclosure judgment for $500,000, that's $125,000. How do you verify that?
There's actually a case on it. I can't remember which one it is right now, but there's actually a case on it.
All right. Well, that being said, with a 30-day rule from your guys' experience in dealing with these, as you call them, kangaroo courts, or we're calling civil court, in this case, what we believe to be the synagogue of Satan, where they're summoning the dead dude to charge them, etc. We've walked in there with this paperwork that now she's striking it. Basically, the hotshot attorney got her to sign an order to strike these documents stating that we're alive.
Right. You want to claim on that too. You're not accepting their order, is like he said.
Well, I don't accept your contract offer.
Right.
Because that's everything the court does. Remember, it's all about the money. So they try to get you to sign off, basically, by accepting the court order or decision.
Right.
And that's the reason why I wrote back to the court and I said, I do not accept your contract offer. I got a letter back from the judge. He said, you have to be stopped.
Yeah. Because once you start figuring out you don't have to accept their constitution or their foreign court offers, because
it's
it's
a
an
pseudo-corporate court, because the judge, once he becomes a corporation, and the court is a corporation, they're for pseudo-corporate courts. They're not under Title III or any other title. They're unconstitutional courts running amok.
And by the way, did you ever go down and to the county clerk and ask for a copy of his oath?
I got a copy of it.
Ed.
Wait a minute, hold on a minute, Dave. All right, so you got a copy of his oath. What Constitution it says?
Florida Constitution, I believe.
Is that Florida original Constitution or the Florida Corporation Constitution?
I don't have a freaking clue if it says U.S. Constitution. I probably have it here in an email someplace, but I went to you go to the Board of Elections here in Florida, and they send you a copy.
Right. And so what I'm saying is, and then you want to respond back to them and ask them to clarify what Constitution.
Okay.
That's a good point, Ed.
You want them to clarify what Constitution. Because when I was elected to office, I wanted to know what Constitution I was making my oath to. And they didn't like it because I wasn't going along with the corporation contract. That's why, the state attorney general, the district attorney, the cops, and everybody tried to stop me everywhere I went throughout the state of Oregon when I was having meetings, because they didn't want the information I was providing to people.
Well, they don't like the idea of the flag information getting out either, because that proves that they're unconstitutional court under color law fraud.
That's right.
But Judicial Watch has a lot of stuff on this court business too, in case you didn't know that. Are you familiar with the Your State Styles Manual?
You mean the Chicago Styles Manual, where everything's dog Latin and it's basically written in such a way that you can't understand it? Is that where you're going?
Illinois has what they call a Styles Manual.
Right.
That should help you out in some degree as to how they're pulling bullshit on you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, again, we're going back.
Court cases to back up what they're saying.
Are you familiar with Scott versus McNeil?
Yeah.
Moses Scott, 1894, goes out of town for 7 years. They sell his stuff. They sell it to somebody else. Everybody makes money. He comes back and he says, I'm alive. I demand my stuff back from the probate court. And essentially a live man can't have letters of administration that are operation of law valid because he's not dead.
Well, that's a good point.
Well, that's the premise of I Am Some Dude's. He used to call it the Meek. Now he calls it Turnabout is Fair Play. And I give Boris credit because he doesn't charge anybody anything. All the information's there. Just like Ed, he's a stand-up guy that wants to help. And the Turnabout is Fair Play. I have that information. Matter of fact, let me send it to you, Ed, and you can share it.
Okay, I'll put it up on the website for people.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the lawsuits are in here, too. Well, I think this is actually something. This is a PDF. Oh, the anti-government handbook for judges goes into all of this alleged, again, oxymoronic logic. I'm just going to say, it says that there's very little time left on the heading on this one. But I guess where I was going with that is if I'm not, what I like about one gentleman that Ed and I have talked to who's also involved on Facebook in a group, and he basically says all these laws are copyrighted. So in order to use a copyrighted law, you have to have permission from the copyright holder. Just like when he gets stopped by a cop and he's traveling without any kind of traditional, encumbrances, like I have a driver's license and insurance and registration, and that's what they ask you for. And he says, well, first off, if you're a peace officer, then you have a manual. Do you mind getting your manual? And he said these laws are copyrighted, so I can't submit to them because it doesn't apply to me. It applies to you.
Actually, when a police officer pulls you over, the first question out of your mouth should be, what is your emergency, officer, that I can help you with? Because they're not allowed to just pull you over. And you tell them my fee schedule is $100,000 an hour with a minimum 4 hours. So if you're planning on detaining me, the time starts right now.
Well, I don't travel at this stage. Like I said, we're when there's a psychopath with a gun, it's cheaper sometimes just to pay the $100 a month in insurance. But I understand where you're coming from, and I'm not downplaying that whatsoever. But I was interested in hearing about what you had done to validate that the judge was a corporation on DNB, and then secondly, how you would.
Yeah, I validated it because I went into DNB and pulled his papers.
Right.
And then printed them out. And then I confronted the son of a bitch. That happened in the Court of Common Pleas in Hancock County, Ohio. In a case that I had filed there. I said, would you care to explain this, Judge?
If I may.
Yeah.
The comment I heard, when there's a psychopath with a gun running around, it's cheaper to pay the $100. Each one that pays the $100 and they are not stood up to make sure that your children and your children's children are going to be more and more oppressed. So it's actually cheaper to stand up early than to just pay the $100 and pass it on to the next generation.
Well, my question to the court on that was, let's see, where's your true bill? I want a true bill. You're gonna charge me something. You better have a true bill. Because I don't have to pay it if it's not a true bill.
Yep.
And how can I pay this? How can I pay this supposed debt to the court with counterfeit money? Isn't the Federal Reserve note a debt instrument? How do I pay debt with debt?
And by federal law, you can't.
They don't like my questions in court.
How would you respond when they ask you your name?
The judge or the clerk of the court said to me, he said, "You're going to pay this out of your own pocket." I said, "I can't pay it out of my own pocket because all I have in my pocket is fiat currency. It's backed by nothing." He threw me out of his office.
Anyhow, his question, Dave, was, how do you respond to a cop when they ask you for your ID? I tell them,
I don't need it.
I go to the point, I'll let you respond here in a minute, Dave, but I always
According
ask...
to the right to travel, the only people who need to have driver's licenses and license plates are commercial vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not required, and that's what I told this. I actually told this to a Nevada State patrolman. I said, number one, I don't need license plates, I don't need driver's license, and I don't need registration. Well, he come back to me after he went back to his car. He said, well, you're not in our system. I said, of course not. My car isn't registered. So again, officer, what is your emergency that you pulled me over for that I can help you with? He said, have a nice day, hop in his car, and went down the highway. And I got two witnesses to back that up.
Okay. I just found what you asked me earlier about the oath of office. First off, It came from the Administrative Assistant number 3 from the Office of the General Counsel, Florida Department of State in Tallahassee. And it says, enclosed, find the public record responsive to your request for the blah, blah, blah judge. Then it says, oath of office, Article 2, subsection 5B, Florida Constitution, State of Florida, County of, and then it says, I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support, protect, and defend the Constitution, and this is upper and lowercase, government of the United States and the state of Florida, and that I am duly qualified to hold office under the Constitution of the state, and that I will well and faithfully perform the duties of judge of the circuit court.
Okay.
So does that answer the question about what?
Okay,
essentially,
now
I guess
you go into the court and you find out what flag they're flying in that courtroom, because now you can either prove that the judge is flying a gold fringe flag or not. If he's flying the gold fringe flag, that's treason against his oath.
We go in. Inside the
because that makes him a military court.
That is a federal crime.
And you take a picture of that flag in his court. Take your camera in there, your cell phone camera in there, and you take a picture of it.
Let me tell you something. Before you walk in the court, there's a big sign that they have passed an administrative rule here in Florida, and that there's no recording or pictures or video recording or anything along those lines.
Oh, no.
We'll do this before court comes into session.
Listen to me about the courtroom. It's on the 20th floor of a demonic building, downtown Orlando area. When you go into it, you can only push one button for the elevator, and that's after somebody finds out where you're going and they clear you for that floor. It only stops on one floor. You get off the floor, and there's like 4 offices. That's basically what it boils down to, 2 bathrooms and 4 offices. When you walk in the office, it's no more than about, I'm going to guess, 15 by 15, like a hotel room.
Okay.
And there is essentially a table with 4 chairs that the officer escorts the attorney to, and if there is a court reporter, she sends behind the plaintiff or the defendant or whomever it is, and there's a gal in the corner with dreadlocks taking notes on they're on a pedestal seated next to the quote-unquote judge. There is no room, there is no way for you to not pass into the ship, if you will. You're walking, as soon as you walk through that door, you're on their turf, you're in their territory. And these are what they call the circuit courts here in Orlando. So and funny you say that, because I don't even recall a flag, and I remember people saying bring your own little flag that doesn't have like one you could just put on the desk in front of you that's the original flag, with of course no fringe indicating martial law, etc.
That's right. You want to bring in a U.S. flag, because that flag has establishes a jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm.
Until they ask you to identify yourself. Now, how would you answer the judge when she asks you to identify yourself without...
Wait a minute, hang on a second. We have a may I there. Let the may I speak. Go ahead, may I.
Here.
I think the best thing you could do in Florida there is do a public records request under Florida law, which is like a Freedom of Information Act request, and have the clerk certify what flag is being used in your case, which flags, on the U.S. flag and on the state of Florida flag.
If you go outside that courtroom, before you enter the court, there is a standing
finish. Dave, let him finish. Go ahead, may I finish?
By the court clerk certifying the flag being used in that courtroom, you have the evidence that you need. And you can challenge jurisdiction and other things the same way if you so decide.
Well,
I've done things like that.
Yeah, the clerk
I've had them remove the flags before for other people, that I've helped.
Actually, here's one thing. I don't think anybody's ever tried this before. Take a pair of scissors with you
No.
and cut the fringe off the flag.
Stay out of the bar. They get jurisdiction when you go inside that bar. Until
you're not allowing a fraud to happen against you either. So, excuse me, Your Honor, I got to make an adjustment here to this court proceedings because you're running a con job against me with that gold fringe flag. So I need to adjust that flag to make it a lawful flag.
So, but anyhow, let him finish, Dave. Let him finish his thought. Go ahead, may I?
Well, I just want the evidence. I want it certified. And until I have it certified, I'm not ready to proceed. I'm challenging the jurisdiction, you see. Exactly. So I want to know, the flag denotes the jurisdiction of the court. You're not ready to proceed till you know exactly what jurisdiction this court is going to proceed in. And until that is established, you don't want to proceed. How are you going to figure out the jurisdiction? Well, one of the ways is the flag denotes the jurisdiction of the court. I want the clerk here. This is a public records request under the state of Florida law to certify what the flag of the court is. You can also do the same public records request to the judge. Have them certified. It's real simple.
Sure. Public
records request. It's their law. Put them on the spot. Put them on the hot seat. Certify the jurisdiction. Flag denotes the jurisdiction of the court. Certify if they're using a yellow fringe flag and what jurisdiction is this.
That's right, anyway, that flag falls under military regulation.
Fine, let them certify it.
That's
now
right.
You got them.
Yeah.
But otherwise you're just howling in the wind.
Well,
but the minute they certify it, you can use it against them. One time on the name game, I was helping someone, and I says, well, they're coming after you in this bogus name, and this is a heavy-duty criminal charge. Why don't you go to the DMV and get a document from them that you're not civilly dead? And I says, and you need to go to the county coroner. We need a document from them that you're not civilly dead. And we need to find out from the port authorities if there's any vessels or ships by your name. And got all that evidence, put it in the court case. Boom, case is dismissed. Had all certified evidence.
Yep. There you go.
Anyway, that's all. Hope it helps.
Good points, and thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah.
I think the gentleman, I don't know your name, may I? But I heard you talk the other day, and you guys were kind of, maybe it was a recording, maybe a couple weeks behind, but you were having a lengthy conversation, and to the point where you felt like you may be dominating the floor, but all the information was good information. But one of the things that came up on another call recently here was something called the proof of life, where you have a picture on ours, for example, with two signatures from people that know you're alive, and that was admitted into evidence. That was one of the documents this judge decided to strike. Anything that had to do with cess decay, anything that had to do with proof of life, indicating that they were charging a dead dude as opposed to a real man.
All stop. I like to rely on what's called reliance defense. Now, what's the best reliance defense? It comes from the government. It comes from them saying so. It comes from the Secretary of State certifying something. There's law that says that it cannot be challenged in court.
So let me ask you this, because in the process of going through this learning curve, we did the Secretary of State apostille, I believe it is, right? Apostillation. And then we took those documents, included them with certified copies of documents out of the case, had those apostilled, and then we put that into the record. and these are documents she struck. So I've heard recently here someone say something to the effect of, you know, when they call your name in the court, essentially where I was going with this was, you know, here's the authorized representative for that party.
Well,
and here's
I don't like to tell you what the challenge is, but the minute you start discussing that, you're starting to give them jurisdiction. I don't like to give them the name until I know the jurisdiction. I think, from my perspective, the most important thing before you ever give them your name is to know the jurisdiction of the court, the proceedings.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I come from. By doing that, a form of that, I once had a U.S. Marshal come into the courtroom to arrest the most powerful judge in the state.
Well, you're absolutely right when you say you have the right to question jurisdiction, because then the judge has to prove he has it.
When's the best time to do it, though? In the middle of the case or before the case begins?
Well, literally, you can do it at any time, even after a judgment. But I understand what you're saying.
I said, when is the best time to do it? It's before the case begins. You need to know the jurisdiction of the proceedings. So why do you want to give them your name or go down that road till you understand the jurisdiction of the case?
Well, and I've heard of people writing the judge 3 different times to ask that question.
Well, you got to get certified.
In this state, it's illegal.
Let him finish. May I finish, please? Go ahead, may I?
If you got to get it certified, and if you don't get it certified, you're not ready to proceed. You don't want, it's non-consent, non-agreement to their bogus, fraudulent contract. Tell the truth, you know. And you got a public records request. Your Honor, tell the truth. What jurisdiction are you proceeding in? What jurisdiction are you processing this case in? Did you not take an oath to support the Constitution of the United States? Original jurisdiction, do you not intend to process this case under the Constitution of the United States?
Well, they don't like that one.
No, because they tried to get a grand jury indictment against me on that. And the U.S. Attorney, Kent Robinson in Portland, he got the shit kicked out of him because I just kept telling the jury, you know, did you not take an oath to support the Constitution of the United States of America? He wouldn't answer. Did you not take an oath to process this case under the Constitution of the United States of America? Did you not take an oath to process this case under the Uniform Commercial Code 1-207, paragraph 9? That's what it was at that time. It's changed.
1-308.
Right. But, you know, there's thousands of ways to put these guys in the hot seat, from my perspective. I've been fortunate that way.
Have you had any experience in fighting foreclosure based upon that, or getting it kicked out based upon anything along those lines?
A little, yeah. I don't go down that road too much. It seems like I end up more on the criminal side.
No, and I heard last time, some of the serious stuff that you were handling. And you were coming in as I don't recall the terminology used, but basically it was like
I come in as counsel of choice. I go in as counsel of choice because the minute they deny the party counsel of choice, guess what they just did? They violated your constitutional rights. You got them set up to sue them. Now you got them set up to have a U.S. Marshal come in the courtroom. They're just screwing their case up if they're going to deny a defendant in a criminal case due process of law, and they won't even let him have counsel of choice. I'm not an attorney. It's just, I just want I come in under the 6th, 7th Amendments, counsel of choice.
Let me ask you something very basic. If I'm being demanded to have a document signed by an attorney, is there any reason, in your opinion, or does anybody have 2 cents to throw in, what I couldn't just sign as attorney in fact?
I'm not sure what the document is without knowing more. I can't so state.
I'm not sure I would use that document.
I mean, just the title in order to submit a motion for an enlargement of time, for example, something simple. Or like, I understand what you're saying. I don't understand the contract. I'm not here to contract and all that earlier. But that was one of my thoughts, was because they're basically suing my wife in her formerly known name, and one can stand in as attorney in fact for somebody.
If he hadn't, you can go in there as a private attorney general.
Yeah, you can.
And that way you
With
don't
more,
have to go as the attorney as you're stating it there.
Well, attorney in fact,
Congress established the Private Attorney General Act during the Kennedy administration. And there's, I don't know, a lot of information out there on that. Rod Class, especially Rod Class, he has the official title of Private Attorney General signed by Congress. So you might want to contact him and find out how he's doing. He won his case, by the way, in D.C. On that
right?
gun issue.
Oh yeah, I didn't know.
And D.C. Has now changed their law relating guns. So Rod did everybody a favor on that one. But his name's Rod Class.
I'm familiar.
Yeah, he's pretty easy to get a hold of too.
Is that right? You know him, Ed? You got
He's
his
on
number?
Lycum. I know he's on Lycum. If you have access to Lycum, you can contact him through there.
Yeah, he's pretty easy to get a hold of. I don't have his number in front of me, but I've talked to him.
I don't know what Lycum is. You're not saying LinkedIn.
Well, that's the way I pronounce it. It might be pronounced something different than that, but.
Oh, okay. LINK, LinkedIn.
Yeah, it's like Facebook, only it's a different program. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, I didn't know what you were talking about. All right. So then so the private attorney general seems like it makes better sense. And a friend of mine gave me a document. It's basically for requiring the court to take mandatory
judicial notice.
The private attorney general acts on behalf of himself or others for public good. Okay, that's the concept of the private attorney general. So whatever you go into court with must not only benefit you, it must benefit the general population.
Well, here's what I was leading up to. A demand for civilian due process in light of the fact that you're under the military rule, if you will. In one of his documents, it has to do with a mandatory judicial notice, and that is a notice to the court and the presiding judge, and et cetera, under international law, a protected person, quote unquote, pursuant to the guidelines as subscribed in the United States FM 2710, which is a military document you're probably familiar with, Lieber Code, Hague, Geneva, Vienna Conventions, et cetera. And then he even goes into an executive order 13818 signed 12/20 of 17 by Donald Trump. And he basically states, as you're aware, this matter is not a private bar matter pursuant to the guidelines as appointed advisor under the United Nations to ensure public order and safety, ensuring that these matters remain free from any and all human rights abuses or criminal activities. I do not understand these proceedings and do not consent to proceed until I'm properly represented, and I demand my civilian due process. Any failure to do so, failure to deliver, the court is advised to seek competent legal counsel for liability of the presiding judge under the domestic and international law subscribed and set forth within the executive order 13818 and the Nuremberg Principles. Then the second document is the demand for civilian process. Again, he makes it very clear, there is a mistake, for I do not understand these proceedings. I do not consent to proceed until I'm properly represented, and I demand civilian due process. Now, since they're demanding we get an attorney, and this document, which I have not submitted, is demanding civilian due process rights, would you care to comment on your thoughts on that?
I've never heard it put that way. I know when I went to court, I read the judge's rights under Miranda. And I told him if he couldn't afford an attorney, he wanted to be appointed to him.
Wow, okay.
And he got really pissed at me. So, and I really didn't care because I told him, I said, well, man's an animal, so we got kangaroo courts ran by jackasses. And he didn't like that one either. So I didn't get along with him very well. So anyway, the Private Attorney General Act, getting back to that, I think that would be probably the best way for you to go. Just to avoid a lot of issues with I don't think you want to be a lawyer because the definition of lawyer is liar. So I don't think you want to go that way in court. I would go with the Private Attorney General Act myself. And you can Google that on the internet and bring all that up. So
yeah, an attorney, in fact, is just someone that's standing in for someone and signing for them. That's all the legal definition is, if I recall correctly. But I understand what you're saying. I wouldn't want to be labeled an attorney either. You know,
once you get to the attorney deal, that declares you incompetent, and therefore the attorney is, misrepresenting you from that point on.
Right.
Under the Constitution, it's counsel of choice. Any controversy over $20, you have the right to trial by jury and counsel of choice.
You want a trial by grand jury, not just a trial by jury. You want a grand jury, and
well, of course, I'm just trying to. I go for the trial by jury, as for what it says.
A jury of your peers.
That's right, and they don't have a jury of your peers.
Yeah.
It's all corporate jury. Everyone, they pull the jury.
It depends on how crooked the court is, whether or not you want to go by grand jury, trial by grand jury.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I've just never come across. Yeah.
To me, it's much simpler to stay with original jurisdiction. They don't want you to go to original jurisdiction, so they'll try to do everything they can to keep you out of original jurisdiction.
I question jurisdiction.
That's where they dig a deeper hole. And
Judge ignored it. Please, Dave, wait till he finishes. Go ahead.
When I'm going for original jurisdiction, the government digs a deeper hole, and it gives you ammunition then to say, hey, I'm flat out, this is a denial of whatever rights that come up, due process, violation of this right, that right, and all them rights. And that's how I had the U.S. Marshal come into a courtroom one time to arrest the judge. It was full of attorneys. The courtroom was to represent
I agree with you.
Defend the county and everyone else. But you got to kind of set them up. So they're going to deny you original constitutional rights, but that gives you ammunition to use against them.
Right.
By what authority? Where do they get their authority? Didn't you said the judge took an oath to the Constitution and to the state of Florida?
Well, that's exactly
Not
right.
State of Florida. The corporation is probably State of Florida all capitalized. The original Constitution for Florida probably is upper lowercase, the state of Florida. I'm not positive, but I think that's the way it is.
It may actually be a republic.
The Constitution is what established their office in the first place. So if they want to ignore the Constitution, they have no standing.
That's right. Now you go after the court. They don't want that to happen. It's like, let him win, you know?
Right. Yeah, no, a lot of these guys go around saying, well, I have immunity, sovereign immunity. Well, no, because the United States went bankrupt 5 times now. Once you go bankrupt, you lose your sovereignty.
Well, you're considered civilly dead because you don't have any money. You're a bankrupt. And that's where the definition of civilly dead comes in. So if you go to the DMV and they say you're not civilly dead, and the county coroner says you're not civilly dead, well, you're not a bankrupt, are you?
Correct.
It is a name game.
So,
yeah.
you guys have any insight on
the definition of words through the legal dictionaries to find out how they're putting it to you?
To segue on the name game, last question, and then I'll shut up. But what about changing your name through probate court, your family courts, and getting the name that you're changing, the one that's on your original social, like you said, upper and lowercase, from the all cap? Does anybody have any experience in that, or any horror stories or testimonies that we're sharing?
I don't know why I'd want to do it. I'd rather focus on owning the straw man name.
That's right.
Well, I've already done that in terms of when you say owning it, copywriting it, and that was entered into the case as well. But my question is, if you have any experience
well,
in that.
Well, I can tell you that when I did that for a party, I went in as their counsel of choice, and the way I did it for them, the guy was, they tried to get him for murder. He was convicted of involuntary manslaughter. And when I entered the stuff in there, they brought in over 30 attorneys in the case because they didn't want the state to lose the case. They were trying to figure out every angle they could. And my piece of paper as counsel of choice was, if anyone in this courtroom has a superior lien to my property, bring it forward. Otherwise, I want my property. And the sheriff says, what do you want in this case? And I says, I want his record expunged. I want his son given back to him. He was a young 3-year-old boy. And I want the state to leave this party alone. They've done all of that. And all it was over a UCC-1 filing that was certified.
Certified
in favor of the father.
How do you get it? How is it certified? By the court?
You take it to the Secretary of State, you file a UCC-1, and then you have the Secretary of State Corporation Division certify it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
If you haven't got it certified, you don't have much energy. You haven't got much strength. It was certified by the Secretary of State. Now, either it's a good document, they certified it. They're the expert second party witness on it. So how does a judge come along and say that it's not lawful? He hasn't got the authority. He's down below the Secretary of State. The Circuit Court judge is. It's a certified document from the Secretary of State who owns the child.
When I filed my UCC-1 and we did a usufruct, which the bottom line is on that document, it was certified by the county recorder, but we never took it up to get it certified by the Secretary of State. But
well, it's 10 times more powerful by the the Secretary of State than it is by the county recorder. You should have had it.
Well, the county
the
itself
opposite.
you're operating in is the same county, so I thought that would hold some water. But that sounds like a good idea. It's similar to an apostle.
If you wanted to do the extra certification, it should have been done, number one, filed with the Secretary of State, certified with the Secretary of State, then bring it to the county. And if you want them to certify it and file it, go ahead.
Okay. Good ideas. Thanks for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because once you got things certified, they can't go against the certification. Because that means they prove everything they certified as a fraud.
Well, somebody in the Secretary of State or somebody in the Secretary of State's going to lose their job, aren't they?
Yep.
Because they certified it. And if it's not good, they better not certify it.
Right.
And that means usually, besides using their job, sometimes it means a jail sentence because they'll do that to set a precedence.
Well, it's easier for the court just to let the case fall through the cracks.
Yeah. That one is a fact.
Yeah, and that's generally what happens is you win.
Yes.
You signed a contract, man. You paid money. You pay your $25 or whatever to have that certified. They better not breach it.
Right. So, I mean, it's very simple on a lot of these things. But people make it difficult.
Mm-hmm.
They make it difficult for themselves without realizing it, too.
Anyway, I'm signing off. Let somebody else talk.
Putting themselves in jeopardy of being sued.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, all right. So, do we got any more questions at this point? So, seeing that nobody wants to speak up, I guess what we'll do is we'll call it an evening. And
this is Michael.
Go ahead, Mike.
I would like your email address, Ed, if you would be willing to give that out.
Okay. Are you on Facebook?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Are we friends on Facebook?
Not that I know of.
All right. Because I'm simple on Facebook. I'll give my Facebook out who I accept.
Okay.
It's Edward Johnston, and my Facebook page is a white teddy bear with a red.
You cut off. White teddy bear with a red what?
Rose.
Red rose. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Me a friend's request right now before we get off so we can make connections so that way we know we connected.
Well, I'm quite sure I'm not friends with you, and I'm on a flip phone, and I can't get onto Facebook right this minute.
Oh, okay. You know, and then if you, on the other point, you could always put a request into New Oregon Trackers on Facebook. That's the site that we run too.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
So we'll get you whatever you're thinking of. So, okay.
Appreciate it.
Go ahead.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you for your time and your conversation this evening.
Oh, no problem. So
by
anybody...
the way, if you go on the New Oregon Trackers website, all the links to all of our websites are all back.
Mm-hmm.
So all you have to do is click on it. You go direct to the website.
Very good. I'll do that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, because we have that, and I'll put you in the friends list of everything because we got a lot of the court cases and everything on those sites themselves in files. So we want to make sure that we can get the information out. And remember, you're adults. You're responsible for your own actions. We are not attorneys. We are not lawyers. We're nothing but just men having a conversation.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem, because the whole thing is about being respectful, because nobody wants to take a liability issue for somebody else's liability.
Of course not.
You know, so I mean, you know, it's like a kid's. You know, you're not going to take your neighbor's liability unless you have faith in that kid and that into the people that you're dealing with. So, anyhow, anybody else got anything they would like to add?
I want to say thanks a lot. Good show. Appreciate everybody's input.
Oh, no problem. And I sent you that other email back to you, so hopefully you got that.
I did. I'll hit you back later. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay.
Have a blessed.
No problem. No problem.
Thank
Anyhow,
you for joining us and taking part in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Amen, brother. Thank you.
So, anyhow, anybody got anything else to speak up before we decide to call it a night? So, okay, well, then I guess we're going to call it a night. We'll be on afterwards for a little bit here. So anyhow, anybody that will catch up next week, well, I'd like to say, may the Great Spirit bless your children. May Mother Earth feed you, provide your children, and may the Great Spirit bless us all.
Thank you, Ed. I'd like to thank everybody for listening to the Geriatric Springer Show. Oh wait, no, the Education by Ed. Sorry.
Oh, thanks a lot.
It was getting there for a bit, people talking over each other, probably because their hearing aids are not turned up properly. But either way, it is March 11th, 2018, and it is currently 7:54 Pacific Standard Time. And anyone who is listening to this later, if you've got Ed's phone number, do not call him before 11 in the morning Pacific Standard Time, because he stays up really late working on a lot of this stuff, and he gets a little sleep very little sleep as it is. So, if you call beforehand, you're either trying to be a troll and trying to cause issues, or you're too stupid to actually comprehend what time zones are, which means you're not going to be smart enough to comprehend what is being spoken on here. So, either way, thank you for listening. You all have a good night.
Good night.